Parents demand I cancel my wedding for sister's engagement, but the truth about her cheating changed everything. Engaged to my fiancé Jake, 30 million. I, a 28-year-old lady, have been for roughly 8 months. Up until last week, when my parents shocked us, our October wedding was scheduled and all was going according to plan. For background, Mia, 25F, our younger sister, has always been the golden child in our family. She has been seeing Tom, 26 million, her lover, for around 2 years. In practically every sphere of our existence, my parents have always showered Mia with royal care. Though I hate to sound negative, I have always felt as though hers dominates my successes. Mia was a cheerleader while I was a straight-A student playing on the volleyball team back in high school. Her achievements always seemed to eclipse all mine. Not to get me wrong, cheerleading merits just as much respect as any other sport, but would it have killed my parents to exhibit the same fervor for my events? I grew used to my absent parents and learned to expect almost little from them. I thus cut myself off from Mia, though deep down I knew it wasn't her responsibility. My immature self blamed mom for everything. My viewpoint altered only in college, when I met Jake, the love of my life. He let me see that I deserved just as much attention as everyone else and was deserving of affection. Jake showed me that every one of us is unique in our own right and that, should someone not value my accomplishments, well, that is their loss. I also realized that it was unfair to hold Mia totally responsible when our parents were clearly in charge. I thus resolved to try to rebuild whatever sisterly relationship we still had. I started letting her know she could talk to me about anything and checking up on her more often. She first hesitated naturally, but she soon grew more at ease sharing with me. We discussed practically anything, regardless of its silliness or gravity. Though our tastes and paths of life were different, I was glad our connection was getting better gradually. We seemed to be at last the sisters we ought to have been all along. Mia knew first when Jake proposed to her. Telling me she couldn't wait to help arrange my wedding, she was as eager as I was. Everything seemed ideal at that point. I was therefore really taken aback when my mother called last Wednesday. The call began innocuously enough. Mom inquired about wedding preparations, which was odd given her previous lack of enthusiasm. I ought to have seen something was wrong. She finally got right to the point after a few minutes of small talk. Mia and Tom were getting engaged. I started to be delighted for my sister as soon as those words emerged from her mouth. Better than this, what could be? Then I noticed Mom had stated, planning to get engaged, which threw me off. Mom said Mia had told her Tom had been hinting at proposing when I asked her what she meant by that. He had done all the other usual things, asked about her ring size, advised her to get a new outfit, and told her. Although these were rather clear indicators, Mia always had a tendency of romanticizing everything and exaggerating events to make them appear more than they really were. I wanted Mia not to have her expectations skyrocketing only to be let down. When I asked Mom whether she was absolutely convinced Tom was proposing, she answered boldly. That would have marked the end of the call, but another surprise was approaching, one I would not be pleased about. My mother asked me to call off our wedding since Tom and Mia were apparently engaged. I let out a gasp. Though I must have misinterpreted, I asked her to clarify. No, she was dead serious. For 10 months I had been planning. She wanted me to call off the wedding Jake had proposed. We had waited this long since we wanted the wedding of our dreams and refused to compromise on anything. Deposits for the caterers and other suppliers had already been laid down. Not to mention the inconvenience of rearranging things, moving everything back a year would entail losing a large sum of money. What had descended upon Mom and Dad was unknown to me. When we were short on money, they had volunteered to cover the venue. I assumed this was because they were at last interested in my life. Looking back, it seemed like they did it to challenge Jake's parents. But I was too delighted at the time to pay attention to their hidden agendas. Wait, though, this was not even the worst of things. You haven't heard the rationale behind my planned delay of my wedding for Mia's expected engagement. Mom clarified that Mia wanted to be the center of attention for a full year, complete with announcements on social media and engagement pictures. I could not understand at all. Who loses money over something as flimsy as social media and calls their sister off from her wedding? Promising not to post anything about my wedding online, I tried to argue with Mom, but she claimed they would withdraw all the money they had promised for the wedding should I refuse to postpone it. Their lovely daughter was an attention seeker, hence at this time they were virtually blackmailing me. This was ludicrous and unfair, I told my mother. We debated for some time, her arguing that I was being thoughtless of Mia's sentiments and selfish. What about my feelings? I asked repeatedly. Still, I received no meaningful response. She responded simply that they wouldn't pay for the venue should I proceed with the wedding. I got furious. All my life, I gave things up for Mia's sake. Now, when I was at last ready to experience the day of my dreams, That too was being robbed from me. Out of pure annoyance and rage, I did something I never would have done. I contacted Mia's fiancé, Tom, to let him know something about Mia he didn't know. The four of us, Jake and I, Mia and Tom, went on a double date some years ago when everything was good. One of those few times when we all had time to hang around together. I recall being quite content. We laughed, told stories, and for once everything seemed ideal. Mia and I excused ourselves to the bathroom to freshen at one point throughout the evening. Mia handed me her phone to hold as we corrected our makeup so she could wash her hands. A text message suddenly sprang up on the screen. It came from someone called Mike wondering whether they might get back together. My heart still missed a beat. Though I heard Mia had dated someone some years ago, I felt he was no more relevant. Not sure I could resist asking, "Who's Mike, and why is he asking to meet again?" Mia started to spin right away. She dismissed it, believing it was nothing, just some old acquaintance extending outreach. Still, I could see her eyes ablaze with dread. I questioned once more whether something was developing between her and Mike. She said she had some texting back and forth, but she insisted it was not major. She shrugged her eyes and replied lightly, "Tom didn't need to know, it's nothing," when I inquired whether Tom knew about this. Tom seemed to be a nice man totally loving Mia. Though I couldn't get rid of the uncomfortable sensation, I let it pass since Mia later on told me she was no longer corresponding with her ex. Right then, as Mia was trying to rob me of my bliss, my thoughts went crazy. I lay it all out when I phoned Tom, roughly following the text I had seen that day. And should that not be sufficient, I advised him to monitor his girlfriend. Looking back, I realized this was sort of improper, not the sort of truth I should have been imparting to Tom, of course, but the way I did it. But already it was too late. I spoke with Tom 2 days ago, and then Mom called. Just say I was glad I wasn't in front of her. She was yelling like a crazed person, as though a tragedy had hit. Her comments really impacted me as I had made a major error. Tom apparently told Mia they needed to talk when phoning her. Mia got all ready even though she was about to be engaged, but when she at last arrived at the location, Tom was quite irate. He inquired whether that was accurate and reiterated what I had said. Mia first denied it, but she grew angry when Tom wanted to see her phone, telling him he should believe her. Tom split from Mia at last. Mom and Dad never seemed likely to pardon me for this. Mom yelled at me, and I could hear Mia berating me in the backdrop. I kept apologizing, saying I only did this because they insisted I call off my wedding. I told them I had worked very hard on it. Dad's ruling then was that he was taking back the money they had set aside for the venue. I felt as like I had lost everything, my parents, Mia, and any chance for a marriage at that same instant. Given what had happened, I knew Jake would not be pleased with me either. When I attempted phoning Mia to have a conversation, she didn't respond to my calls or texts. At the time, Jake was on a business trip, hence he was not aware that our wedding was under risk, partially because to me. Though it wasn't entirely my fault, the stress was intolerable and I felt bad for damaging Mia's relationship. I at last told Jake everything when he returned from his trip. He was quite helpful and encouraged me that we would work things out together. It relieves me. He helped me see that I ought to have done it even earlier, as being honest was the correct thing to do. Regarding the wedding, Jake and I decided to proceed even if it meant lowering expenses. We began generating ideas for financial savings. We contacted relatives and friends, outlining the circumstances and requesting assistance. Unbelievably, one of Jake's pals came to save us. He came upon us at a classy but reasonably priced location via one of his contacts. Given the current situation, we simply have to delay the wedding somewhat more, which is quite okay with me. I was attempting to stay in touch with my parents throughout this. Looking back, I'm not sure why I did this. At the time, I was afraid of being let down. I was living with guilt. Still, they were obstinate, refusing to show up for my wedding if it proceeded as scheduled. The wedding was still under preparation, and despite all the challenges, everything began to fall together. Sadly, many of my family RSVP'd that they would not be going or responded little at all. I could guess the news had gone without having to be Sherlock. One of my aunts told me Mom and Mia had depicted me as a soap opera villain who lied to undermine her sister's happiness and could not accept it. They even changed the story, saying Mia was already engaged and preparing to wed, but I later got engaged to take the front stage. Ignoring me was one thing, lying about my character took effort. By now I was exhausted. After all that had happened, I couldn't look and feel my best for a wedding. Simultaneously, I struggled to let my parents define me as they had throughout their lifetime. They accused me of being envious and cruel, attributing Mia's life destruction to me. Mia, on the other hand, was in ruins. She hadn't spoken to me since the incident, hence even though I knew what I did was appropriate, I felt awful. So, I'm asking you. Am I the a-hole for not postponing my wedding and informing Mia's fiancé of her cheating? Update. I published a few days ago, and the reaction has been really strong. Unbelievably, my parents began talking to me, but not for the reasons you might guess. They insisted that I apologize to Mia and somehow sort things out with Tom. Should I fail, they even threatened to have me disowned. Through all of this, Jake has been rather encouraging, telling me we did the right thing and we should concentrate on our forthcoming wedding. But at last Mia got back to me. Furious and devastated, she accused me of destroying her life and undermining her happiness out of spite. The talk was challenging. She wasn't open to hearing me try to explain my perspective. She persisted in arguing, regardless of what she had done, I had no right to meddle in her relationship. I lost my cool and asked her who gave her the right to believe she could influence my wedding plans that had been in place long before she was almost engaged. She hung up before I could even bring up the lies Mom and she had been telling about me. Meg, a childhood acquaintance I hadn't heard from in years, called me out of the blue when word of the family strife spread like wildfire. After moving out for college, I had disconnected from Meg, and our only means of contact was social media. But Mia had kept in touch with her for a bit longer. Their friendship reached into their early 20s. Meg also disclosed another startling story concerning Mia's adultery, one that happened around a year ago. Meg's 25th birthday celebration was attended by Mia without her then boyfriend Tom, who presumably was on a trip. Meg saw Mia growing more flirty with various male visitors, including her boyfriend, as the evening progressed and practically everyone was intoxicated. Meg first dismissed it as Mia's usual manner. She had always been a natural flirt. Meg knew, though, she hadn't seen Mia or her partner for some time as the celebration drew to an end and guests started to leave. Red-handed together in another room, they were caught. Given Mia and Tom had been dating 2 to 3 years at the time, this was very embarrassing. The episode split Meg and Mia and destroyed their friendship. When Meg learned about everything, she assumed I should know that Mia did nothing by mistake. She had become accustomed to this conduct and had somehow always gotten away with it. This fresh material really surprised me. Mia's dishonesty, I came to see, was not a one-time error but rather a habit. I asked Meg only one favor. Could she kindly forward this news to Tom herself? I was acting for a cause. When my fiancé Jake visited Tom, he was not doing well. Though he didn't say it, I'm sure he was also blaming me for what I had told him. He was second-guessing everything. Better still if someone else than me delivered this terrible news. I also wanted to avoid feeding the story that I was jealous of Mia, hence I didn't want to do this myself. Tom wanted to meet personally to go over things as soon as he received word from Meg. I accepted, expecting for some sort of conclusion or at least clear the air. Tom clearly was in shock from all that had transpired when we met at a neighborhood coffee shop. Meg's disclosure came to him like yet another wave, yet it was welcome to at last know the truth. Tom related how his split from Mia turned out. Mia was right to believe Tom intended to pop the question to her. Following our talk, he challenged Mia about the cheating, and she finally came clean. Though crushed, he valued my candor. He claimed it was preferable to know the truth now than to learn later, maybe following marriage. Tom said he had thought something was awry in their relationship for some time but couldn't pin it down until I phoned. We spoke for a lengthy period during which Tom revealed he intended to set aside time for personal healing and life review. Though it hurt, he appreciated me for having the guts to tell him the truth. Knowing I had done the right thing by being truthful with Tom, this chat brought me closure. Still, things with my family have not gotten better. My parents still support Mia. They think I was out of line and must make apologies. Focusing just on Mia's pain and neglecting the fact she cheated, they cannot seem to understand why I did what I did. Friends and relatives who learned about the circumstances have also been quite helpful. Many expressed shock at the way my parents behaved and praised me for defending what was right. Though I have a mixed bag of feelings, I am appreciative of the help from people who see my viewpoint. I'm trying to keep concentrated on the good and keep wedding planning underway. Despite the threats from his parents, Jake and I have decided to carry out our plans. We have changed the budget and are working to create the wedding unique without their financial support. Though I know the drama is not over, I am resolved to stick to my position. I refuse to allow Mia's behavior or the inclination of my parents define my existence anymore. I have to give my future with Jake top priority and my happiness. Hey, everyone. Every moment that passes makes my life seem to get more convoluted. About 4 days following my initial update, events changed dramatically and unexpectedly. Just as I felt the situation could not get worse, it did. Trying to concentrate, I was at work when Jake called urgently. Panicked, he told me to head straight home. Fuming something horrible, I rushed back. When I got here, Jake seemed obviously upset. He handed me a note that had dropped under our door. It came from a lawyer standing in for my parents. Over the consequences from Mia's failed engagement, they were threatening to sue me for emotional suffering and slanderous remarks. I was astounded. My own parents were suing me. The letter explained how my actions had destroyed Mia's reputation and brought her great emotional suffering. It called for a public apology, a retraction of my remarks on Mia's adultery, and a sizable payback in money. To be as nasty as possible, my parents had stretched every limit. My phone buzzed as I went over the letter. Mia was the one calling constantly. At last, looking for some answers, I took up Mia's voice carrying a mix of desperation and wrath. Saying I had destroyed her life and she had nothing left, she screamed at me. She said she had lost her work since Tom had informed colleagues and mutual acquaintances of hers about her adultery. The word had gone like wildfire, and she was today the target of rumors and criticism. She was deemed problematic, which resulted in her termination. Having my parents send me that legal fear, I felt Mia got what she deserved. She was inconsolable even though I tried to reason with her, stressing that she had to own her actions. Claiming that I had always wanted to see her fail, she charged me with being envious and bitter. The chat made me feel forlorn and exhausted. The rest of the evening, Jake and I went over our choices. Although we couldn't let my parents pressure us into compliance, we couldn't afford to get caught in a legal fight with them. This legal fight would simply mark the nail in the coffin, as I believe they knew we were already juggling our wedding budget. I contacted a lawyer for help the next day. The circumstances stunned him, but he reassured me our case was strong. He advised us to compile proof of Mia's adultery and how it affected her relationship to Tom. Should my parents carry out their threats, he also cautioned us to get ready for a counterclaim. All of this was going on when I got another unplanned call, this one from Tom's mother. Having heard about the circumstances, she wanted to thank me for guiding Tom toward the truth. Tom was devastated, she remarked, but he was glad to learn before committing himself for lifetime. She also said Tom intended to start again in another city. Her call provided a minor solace among all the turmoil. It let me realize that by being honest, I had done the right thing even with the instantaneous fallout. Though they may act as outrageously as they wanted, my parents and Mia would remain in the wrong. That weekend, things took yet another drastic turn. Unexpectedly showing up at our residence were my folks furious. They insisted on talking with me. Though Jake tried to calm them, it soon turned into a shouting contest. While my mother wailed and begged me to mend things with Mia, my father claimed I had destroyed the family. Should I fail to meet their expectations, they reiterated their threats to cut me off financially and go on with the lawsuit. I stayed put, not cowering into compliance. I told them I would not be sorry for speaking the truth. Mia's actions have consequences. My parents stormed out at the end of the confrontation, resolved to start the case. The next several days were a haze of emotional upheaval and legal discussions. Though Jake and I tried to concentrate on our wedding preparations, the tension was too great. Extended family members who had heard about the circumstances started messaging us. Some offered support while others attacked my behavior. Although Jake didn't deserve all this drama, I really detested dragging him through it, but I was also appreciative of his unflinching support. In among all this, Meg, the childhood friend who had informed me of Mia's past infidelity, sent me an unexpected note. Should my parents want to take legal action, her offer to submit a statement regarding what had happened at her party may be very important proof. Meg's encouragement and the data we were compiling helped me to begin to see hope. Although it was obvious that this struggle was far from finished, I resolved myself to stick to what was right. As I am working on it, I also want to thank you all for being my support network during this period. Though it hasn't been simple, you have clearly shown me direction. I will see you folks a little. Hello, everyone. After several more days, the issue has gotten quite hot. Mia and my dad insisted on getting together personally to go over everything. Jake and I consented, believing this encounter could at last provide some clarity and closure. We agreed to get together in our place so we might manage the surroundings and steer clear of a public display. There was clear tension in the air as my parents and Mia showed up. When they sat down, I could see the expectation in their eyes. Though I had no intention of backing down, they most likely assumed I would be apologizing and begging for forgiveness. I began with tackling the elephant in the room. My parents and Mia looked perplexedly, obviously not expecting this. I informed them, I understand why everyone is here today, but before we go any further, I want to make one thing clear. I'm here to lay out the facts. I inhaled deeply and started making my point. I began with the couple months ago. I questioned Mia if it wasn't true that she handed me her phone during our double-date dinner and that I found she was chatting to Mike, her ex-boyfriend, when she was in a very committed relationship with Tom. She said she made a one-time error, but we both knew it wasn't accurate. Mia moved uneasily in her seat, her face pallid. I carried on, opening a folder loaded with proof. She confirmed that Mia had been found cheating with her boyfriend when I told her I had talked with Meg, who threw the party a year ago. This was a behavior trend, not a one-time error. I turned over a written statement Meg sent. Mia's parents and I looked at it, their expressions changing from uncertainty to shock. Still, that was only one thing. I also brought out more proof. Text exchanges between Mia and Meg in which Mia admitted to cheating and pleaded with Meg not to tell Tom. These timestamped signals were unambiguous and devoid of uncertainty. On the table I arranged the printed messages. Though this time it appeared more toward Mia than it did me, my mother gasped and my father's face became red with rage. At last, I turned to Tom and said in a letter, he spoke about how he approached Mia following our talk and how she finally admitted. He also detailed the emotional toll her adultery took on him and how it affected his choice not to pop the question. My parents found no words. Unable to dispute the overwhelming proof, they fixated on the paperwork before them. Tears welled in Mia's eyes, but she said nothing, clearly understanding the seriousness of the matter. I then addressed the lawsuit. Although my parents had threatened to sue me for emotional suffering and slander, based on the facts it was abundantly evident that what I had said was accurate. They lacked legal justification for their posture. Actually, if they went after this, I had a strong case for a counterclaim. The space was quiet. Clearly surprised and adjusting to the reality of the circumstances were my parents and Mia. Knowing that I had at last advocated for myself, I felt relief. For the last time, I told Mia I did this because it was the proper thing to do, not out of spite or jealousy. Mia had consequences for her actions. It was time for her to own them. Regarding my wedding, my message was straightforward. Either with or without their approval, everything was going forward as scheduled. We wouldn't allow someone to destroy our happiness. Jake and I would be getting married. Rising to indicate that the session was over, I hoped this would be a turning point for all of us. That brought me closure and I left the room. Though I am aware that difficulties lie ahead, I feel for the first time in a long time under charge of my own life. Although my parents and Mia can proceed with their case, now they know I will be squarely facing them and there is no good outcome for either of us. The encouragement of our friends and relatives keeps Jake and I forging ahead with our new life. Though the road to recovery with my sister and family will be long and challenging, we are ready to travel it together. Eventually, defending myself and acting morally offered a sense of tranquility I had been lacking for so long. Looking ahead, Jake and I know we are stronger since we confronted these obstacles squarely. Without the recommendations and encouragement in the comments, this would not have been feasible. All of you and your tales have taught me so much. Thank you, then farewell. I'm frustrated because of my useless husband. Am I the asshole for telling my husband that I see him as a liability and not a partner? Sorry for the long post, it's 2 a.m. and I'm crying and tired and worn out. If I'm rambling, it's because I've held this in for so long, not wanting to burden friends or family with my marital troubles. I 34F have been with my husband, 37M, we'll call him Nathan, for 8 years. Ever since our daughter, 3F, was born, I have been unable to trust Nathan with anything, no matter how small. Background context. When I was 19, after a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and turned my car into scrap metal with me inside it. I have enough metal holding me together that I light up like a Christmas tree for TSA and physically impaired with good days and bad days. I used a portion of my settlement check to buy a house outright, and have it retrofitted to accommodate my needs as I'll eventually require a wheelchair. I work in software development as it's fun, and nobody cares if I work from bed on bad days. My husband has not worked in 5 years, which has been fine until our daughter was born. Between the settlement money, a paid-off house, and my salary, I enjoyed having him here with me. He contributed by handling most of the domestics. We pay for a weekly cleaner with monthly deep cleaning because it gives us more time together. Ever since our daughter was born, it was like a light switch turned off in his head. For our daughter, he would buy the wrong size diapers. Not fully mixed bottles. Put diapers on backwards. Leave out poop-covered wipes. Forget to latch cabinets. This past week, he has gone to the store 3 times because he keeps coming home with the wrong size socks and shoes for her. I eventually just ordered the right ones on Amazon. For me, he has tried to help me with my weekly pill organizer fill-up and several times has spilled the contents of new medications all over the floor. Then, not seeing that he didn't get all of them off the floor, he has repeatedly brought me grapefruit juice to take my medications with, a huge no. He has repeatedly forgotten that I can't have dairy and puts milk in my coffee. Or cheese on a burger. He has broken so many things of mine from being careless. He shattered my laptop because it slipped out of his hand when he tried to pack it for a trip. Even after I said I would pack my own electronics. We've lost so many spoons and forks to the disposal. He tried to replace the head gasket in my car and over-torqued the engine bolt, which shattered inside the block, and 2 different shops said they couldn't repair it. We ended up getting a new vehicle because a replacement engine would have cost $11,000. A week later, he crashed the new car into the garage door because he thought he'd pressed the brakes, not accelerator. He wanted to do TikTok and streaming as a hobby. I supported him initially, but I quickly noticed a pattern. Anything regarding our daughter or me, he was sloppy and careless. He never whooped his own stuff. He would build entire sets to stream or make videos with, leave the garage and leave his brain in the garage. It came to a head 4 nights ago. He streamed himself building a new set piece. 9 hours straight. Meanwhile I worked. Clocked out early, to pick up our daughter from summer camp, cooked and fed both of us, got her ready for bed. He came out to help put her to bed. I let him know that I needed to get some work done and would be in my office. And I asked him to take the trash out. He says he will. 2 hours later, I left my office and the house felt really warm. He'd taken the trash out, but left our front door partially open. And was back in the garage with his game volume really loud. I panicked since our daughter was able to get out of bed and thankfully she was sound asleep. But she could have easily toddled right out of the house and he wouldn't have noticed. Then I noticed a stovetop burner was on. With a small pot on it with nothing inside. I didn't use the stove for cooking that night. I popped my head into the garage and said, "Hey, I need you for a minute." I informed him of the door situation and he responded, "I thought I locked it." We checked the camera. And no, he did not. I asked about the burner being on and he said he was planning to make ramen and forgot. He pulled the still hot pot off the burner and put it straight into the sink on top of our daughter's favorite plastic plate. Which is now ruined. I'll admit I overreacted and screamed, "What are you doing?" He realized what he'd done and pulled the pot off our daughter's plate. And straight onto the countertop. I grab it quickly and run it under water to cool it down. I tell him I can't tonight. I can't deal with him. I'm taking my meds and going to sleep. He gets a cup from the cupboard and sets it straight onto the burner that had been on. I hit my limit. I started crying. He kept saying that it was fine, things happen, it's just an accident, he's had a rough day from streaming, he's just tired. Why am I crying? It's just a cup. We can replace it. The anger hit and I said, "It's because I have a liability and not a partner." He said, "What the fuck does that mean?" I screamed that it's because I can't trust him to do anything. That I'm always having to watch him like a child. Always having to bear the costs of his mistakes. That every time I get careless and think I can trust him to be an adult, I'm always the one getting fucked over. I then said, "I can't see you as a partner anymore. You're just another liability in my checkbook." He immediately stormed out of the kitchen and went to bed. I called my mom and told her what happened. She thinks it's just stress and offered to take our daughter for a week so we could figure this out without our daughter seeing it. She says it was an asshole thing to call my husband a liability. In the morning I told my husband that my mom would pick up our daughter from summer camp and offered to watch her for a week. He said okay. And that's the only interaction we've had since. He spends all day in the garage playing games with his friends, making TikToks, and streaming. For food he's been ordering DoorDash and having the person deliver it in the garage. It's been days and he refuses to be in the same room as me. I've tried messaging him to ask if we can talk. Or figure out a solution. But he's just left me to read. If I pop into the garage, he ignores me but apologizes to his friends or viewers for the interruption, and Geek unmutes his mic when the noise stops. Before the blow-up, I've asked if there was something going on. I tried to gently respond every time he screwed up so our daughter didn't associate mistake to anger. I asked him to schedule a doctor to see if something was going wrong medically. He always said I was overreacting, people make mistakes, and didn't see an issue, even when the same mistakes kept happening. When I tried to get him to understand that it was concerning just how expensive his mistakes were getting, he'd wave it off as "it's not like we can't afford it." I love him dearly. I just miss the person he was before we had a child. The one I could trust and rely on. Did I screw this up forever? Was I being too harsh on his mistakes? Am I missing something? Am I the asshole? Relevant comments. OP on if her husband is using her money. OP. Downvoted. We do have a shared account for household expenses and bills, but he is using his own money as far as I can see. When he became a stay-at-home husband, I didn't want him to ever feel like he was financially trapped or abused. Also the thought of my husband having to ask for money, permission to buy things for himself, or not being able to buy gifts discreetly felt ick to me. My paychecks get split between the expenses account, $300 each deposited into separate accounts the other can't see, and the rest to savings. To me, it's his money to save or spend how he wants. I read through all the responses and have removed the allocation to his account. I also removed his name as an authorized user on the bills expenses account. Before our daughter was born, this did seem the fairest, because he was managing the household tasks and maintenance. But I understand everyone's frustration at me since the arrangement is no longer fair or equitable. I can't cancel his card because my name isn't on that account at all, but I have put a stop to this Fridays and all future deposits. OP on if her husband contributed to anything before their daughter's birth and afterwards OP. Before our daughter was born, he was contributing and I valued him for it. He cooked most of our meals, did the daily cleaning chores like dishes, wiping counters, and cat litter scooping. We did bi-weekly grocery trips and bulk store runs together, but one-offs during the week he would handle. He also helped me hit the ground running with scrambled eggs and coffee in bed so I could take my heart medication. I never had to run the laundry or consider taking the heavier pain meds to get through folding and hanging everything. He still mostly does these, minus breakfast. Dishes sometimes sit overnight due to his streaming, but I also attribute it to our toddler wanting each part of her meal in a different small bowl and our dishwasher can only fit so many of the IKEA kids' bowls. He does the daily things like dishes, scooping cat litter, wiping counters, getting trash out, cleaning random messes that occur, etc., plus laundry, yard work. We pay for a weekly cleaner so we don't run into the issue of deferred cleaning. We're neglecting the house for a few days. Illness, doctor visits, family visiting, local outings, etc. doesn't ever turn into a, there's too much to catch up on OMG, where do I start, freeze. I've always struggled with that in the past. And the monthly deep cleaner because it's honestly just really nice having a professional come in. Our monthly deep cleaner is also a professional organizer which has been a tremendous help with the transition from infant to toddler organization of clothing and toys. OP on her husband's qualities. OP. He's incredibly creative and we used to have so much fun working on projects together. He's a modern-day MacGyver. Give him a roll of duct tape, 2 pennies, some foam, cardboard and paint, and he can build beautiful set pieces that could be mistaken for props on Broadway. He learned how to make a mini forge from a flower pot and a makeshift lathe. He practiced until he made the ring he proposed with. Complete with my favorite gemstone, blue opal. His smile is infectious and he tells the best of horrible puns and jokes. He took cooking classes to learn how to make my favorite dishes, and made his own note card recipe book. He doesn't hesitate to belt out everything from Aqua to Backstreet Boys, Broadway show tunes, Nightwish, and everything in between. Off-key but as if the rest of the world isn't there. Play a Michael Jackson song and he's on the dance floor by the end of the first note. When I gave birth to our daughter, I didn't have hospital food as my first meal. He'd worked out an arrangement with the owner of my favorite restaurant. No matter what time of day or night, as soon as I went into labor, he would message the restaurant owner who would prepare my usual faves and personally deliver the meal to the hospital. I had no idea until it arrived and the smell hit my nose. I cried so many happy tears into my food. I love frogs. He used to take a photo of every frog he'd find in our yard. He designed and vacuum formed a sign for our house that features both of our favorite animals and says "Welcome home." If he was out, he'd send me photos of, or come home with, cute frog-themed things. On my bad pain days where I mostly rot in bed, he would bring me meals. On a wooden tray he made. It converts from a carry tray to a bed tray. He got the idea from hospital food trays. He helps me get my socks and shoes on when I just can't quite do it myself. He learned how to do a few styles of updos and how to curl and flatten hair to help me feel pretty. On days where I hate the broken body I have, he'll put my hair up and it brightens my day. That's the person I fell in love with. And so deeply missed. Some days he's that person. But more frequently now, he's not. Update. Sorry for not being so responsive. Thank you to everyone who gave feedback and suggestions and all of the messages. It's been a week. Before I get into the update, I'm going to answer some repeated questions. Skip ahead 8 paragraphs for the actual update. Why does my husband not work? He can easily find employment, but we both agreed that the pay was never worth the toxic environment of his field, unless he wanted to start his own business, which he did not. He worked in home repair and renovation. It was gross how his co-workers spoke of and treated women, female customers and co-workers alike. He saw many female co-workers be sexually harassed into quitting. He hated how gross it made him feel when sales and adjusters would take advantage of women. Yes, Selling inferior and unnecessary services at a premium is a thing. If he said anything, his hours would get cut until he left. He left one job on the first day because his boss left a screaming voicemail for not selling a refrigerant service to a young black couple who didn't even need refrigerant. Yes, he's got documentation and reported multiple employers to the state labor board. And checked back. Nothing was ever done to our knowledge. He's also tried a factory job in a warehouse since leaving the trades. Both heavily penalized him for needing scheduled time off for my medical needs. There's no worker protection here for any of that until FMLA, unpaid, which takes a year to be eligible for. Yes. It is a privilege to walk away from a paying job with your middle fingers held high. I have done the same many times, but I'm happy where I'm at right now because it's the opposite of toxic. I'm thriving, and our company has a no-penalty, unlimited paid sick medical leave policy that is strictly enforced at all levels of management. Any lead who penalizes people for taking leave gets sacked. A unicorn of a company. Add in a child and short of finding another unicorn employer who won't penalize him for needing time off for me or our daughter, such as when daycare closed for a week due to an RSV outbreak, puts him out of the workforce until either I stop working or our child old enough to not need consistent monitoring. Last reason for this dynamic is that although I'm disabled, my job pays almost double the highest salary he's ever had. With no reduction in pay for needing time off. It doesn't make financial sense for us to switch who the working partner is. 2. Does my husband have a large following or make money from streaming TikTok? No. His lives have an average of 6 viewers. And his Twitch has 3 followers. When we did our taxes, he didn't get a 1099 and he showed me that he'd got all of $6 from TikTok live gifts. Nothing from Twitch. His viewer counts are about the same as at the end of last year. 3. Why do we still have a weekly housekeeper and have our daughter in summer camp and part-time daycare? I hate the dynamic of one spouse working a single job for 40 hours a week while the other juggles simultaneous domestic duties, child rearing, care, enrichment, socialization, and essentially being on call 24/7. I would not want those expectations of me and couldn't fathom putting all of it on someone I love and cherish. If my husband did all of the activities and field trips that daycare did, his evenings and weekends would be taken up by domestic duties that I would physically struggle with assisting. The weekly housekeeper helps prevent deferred cleaning paralysis, where small missed things pile up into unwieldy monster tasks and struggling with where to start. The monthly deep clean and organization has been a world of self-care as we navigated to having an infant and the transition from infant to toddler. Edited to add, our daughter started at the part-time daycare when she turned 3. Before then my partner was the primary caretaker, which made the weekly housekeeping that much more helpful in not letting things fall to disarray. 4. The allowance thing. Yes. I wanted a dynamic where my husband had his own money even if he was not working a paying job. Maybe I've been on social media too long, but I've read so many stories of non-working spouses, albeit mostly women, being financially abused or unable to leave marriages because they did not have access to money they could save up in private. Should I have stopped it sooner when our dynamic became too unbalanced? Yes. I own that. 5. As for what happens if when we divorce, the house and settlement balance is in a trust completely separated, and as far as my lawyer can tell, out of his reach. Alimony would be up for a judge to decide, but between my documentation, that his licenses or certs aren't expired, plus my continual medical costs, there's a good chance of not being obligated. Hopefully that answers most or all of the background-related questions. On to the update. Friday I finished work to the smell of food being cooked. My husband was plating dinner on the table when I left my office. He said he wanted to talk over dinner. Some people had given me a heads up that my story was on multiple TikToks, and I'm grateful because it meant being prepared for the possibility he would see it. I have feelings about my post being used for content on the very platform my child and I have been neglected for. Not good ones. He did see one. He asked if it was me and I told him the truth. Yes, I wrote it. Yes, that's how I feel. And yes, I read the comments on Reddit. And no, I won't delete or change how I write about him just because I know he can see it. I don't know how to describe his reaction, but he said he'd spent the last day reflecting on just how bad it could be, for so many medical diagnosis suggestions to be given as reason and justification. He did say that he's not ADHD. His mom was addicted to opioids and Ritalin when he was a kid, and she tried to get numerous doctors to have him diagnosed with ADHD. She had him believing he was, so he also sought out 2 opinions once he was an adult. He didn't learn about her addiction until his mid-20s. He did seek therapy once he was aware that his mom was trying to use him for pills. He said he was willing to see a psychiatrist one more time, But he doesn't think he's ADHD or autistic at all. He does think he might be depressed though. If not depressed, he will ask about some of the other medical suggestions if it will ease my worry or rule out a major problem. He did sound genuine in this, but something he said is sticking with me. He said it jokingly and apologized as soon as he saw the hurt in my eyes. That everyone saying there's something wrong in his brain must be onto something since he chose to love and marry someone medically fragile, knowing our life together would be anything but normal. He did also admit that the night he'd left the door open, the pot on, ruined our child's favorite dish, and a cup, he'd drunk a little too much on his stream, and would monitor that more closely. He said the last few nights, he had been filling his wine bottle with grape juice so it looked like he was a jolly drinking Viking, but was actually sober. He said he would keep doing that. After dinner we went out and he surprised me by seeing the new Deadpool movie. We didn't go to our normal theater because he looked up what each theater had for limited edition popcorn buckets. I now have the baby Deadpool one that holds popcorn and a drink. We spent the next day going over the extent of how our family dynamic changed for the worse. How the little things have added up. How I see change as a part of an apology. If you verbally apologize but repeatedly do the same thing, the apology words are worthless to me. And that he didn't recognize just how frequently he was making the same similar oopsies. Sunday. We spent time talking over short and long terms. What needs to change immediately? Him scheduling his own doctor appointments. Timelines for expectations. He agreed that replacing or fixing things he caused will no longer come out of our expense account. He will pay it from his allowance account. Which we talked about. I did turn deposits back on, but only for $50 per paycheck. He suggested we keep it that way until he's paid back the cost of repairing the garage and car from earlier this year. He said it will take him far longer to undo the cost of destroying the engine to my last vehicle, but that he's going to step up and find ways to make it right. Yes. I see the red flags. Love bombing. Not knowing how frequently despite repeated talks. Thinking verbal apologies are the final step in apologizing and not understanding that repeatedly doing the same problem thing is the same as never apologizing. And yes, I know he will read this. Do I actually think this is resolved, and we will come out of this as a perfect married couple who stays together until one of us croaks? Not really. Full offense to husband, for now. Is it a potential resolution? Maybe. But my husband is fully aware that he has a lot to make up for, a lot to fix, and a tight schedule to make it happen. And that the lesson for our daughter, later in life, is either going to be, taking real accountability can steer a wayward ship back to course. Taking accountability is the right thing to do, even if you don't get the results you wanted. Or, love alone isn't enough. TLDR. Wow, this sucks. I suck for letting it get. I'm frustrated because of my useless husband. Am I the asshole for telling my husband that I see him as a liability and not a partner? Sorry for the long post, it's 2 a.m. and I'm crying and tired and worn out. If I'm rambling, it's because I've held this in for so long, not wanting to burden friends or family with my marital troubles. I 34F have been with my husband, 37M, we'll call him Nathan, for 8 years. Ever since our daughter, 3F, was born, I have been unable to trust Nathan with anything, no matter how small. Background context. When I was 19, after a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and turned my car into scrap metal with me inside it. I have enough metal holding me together that I light up like a Christmas tree for TSA and physically impaired with good days and bad days. I used a portion of my settlement check to buy a house outright, and have it retrofitted to accommodate my needs as I'll eventually require a wheelchair. I work in software development as it's fun, and nobody cares if I work from bed on bad days. My husband has not worked in 5 years, which has been fine until our daughter was born. Between the settlement money, a paid-off house, and my salary, I enjoyed having him here with me. He contributed by handling most of the domestics. We pay for a weekly cleaner with monthly deep cleaning because it gives us more time together. Ever since our daughter was born, it was like a light switch turned off in his head. For our daughter, he would buy the wrong size diapers. Not fully mixed bottles. Put diapers on backwards. Leave out poop-covered wipes. Forget to latch cabinets. This past week, he has gone to the store 3 times because he keeps coming home with the wrong size socks and shoes for her. I eventually just ordered the right ones on Amazon. For me, he has tried to help me with my weekly pill organizer fill-up and several times has spilled the contents of new medications all over the floor. Then, not seeing that he didn't get all of them off the floor. He has repeatedly brought me grapefruit juice to take my medications with, a huge no. He has repeatedly forgotten that I can't have dairy and puts milk in my coffee. Or cheese on a burger. He has broken so many things of mine from being careless. He shattered my laptop because it slipped out of his hand when he tried to pack it for a trip. Even after I said I would pack my own electronics. We've lost so many spoons and forks to the disposal. He tried to replace the head gasket in my